Hello, everyone. Welcome to Discourse, episode 18. In this episode, we're talking about Vox Machina. The legend of Vox Machina, which is an Amazon original series, animated series, an adaptation of the Critical Role web series, which features a number of beloved D&D campaigns, a number of beloved actors and voice actors within the video game industry. Now, I wanted to open this up simply because I just wanted to state right at the top, in case we have any D&D players listening to this right now, please don't be mad. I've only had very little experience with D&D in the past. Famously, I've talked about this on my streams and saying I think I've played about 3 games in D&D, and I didn't complete those campaigns because, as you know, D&D takes a long time. So even though I may not be the biggest fan of it, I respect it. I respect it because of Dungeons & Dragons and its various equivalents, when they delve into science fiction or mystery or what have you. They had a major impact, a major influence on all sorts of video games that I have played, everything from Dragon Age Origins to Divinity Original Sin. But my experience with D&D has been very limited. I created an elf rogue named Revan, who was an alcoholic, and I don't recall that character amounting to really anything. I think I played him in about 3 campaigns with some serious D&D friends that I had back in the day, but I think they just got frustrated with me as I would just wander off and get drunk and not do what I was supposed to do as the rogue and as the pickpocket and locksmith of the group. And my experience of Critical Role is limited. I've always heard about Critical Role; it's always been there, but I've never watched one of their web series. I'm familiar with the actors that work in it, whether it be Ashley Johnson or Laura Bailey or Travis Willingham. But outside of that, I really have no experience with it. But hey, I respect them. Because they've been able to raise tens of millions of dollars for this web series, making it a Kickstarter success, one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns of all time. I mean, hey, good for them. So clearly they have a significant fan base, and the show has proven to be a success on Amazon. They've already greenlit a second season, but I want to specifically talk about the first season. But before we go ahead and move on, I want to thank Deadpool for being here, Emily, Austin, Kazfe, and of course, M. Xavier. But I wanted to start just kind of going down the line and asking what everyone's, experience is with Dungeons & Dragons and also Critical Role. I think we'll go ahead and start with Deadpool this week. You, sir, what's your experience with Dungeons & Dragons and Critical Role in general?
Which is, funny enough, it's actually intertwined.
Oh, cool.
So back around the time actually Critical Role first started, I had a crush on a girl who was really into D&D. So I'm like, let me learn about D&D. And I discovered Critical Role.
Nice.
Started watching it, get hooked on it, starting to get into D&D. Things didn't work out with the girl, but I've been a fan of Critical Role and been involved in D&D and basically being a dungeon master ever since.
Wow,
been playing pretty much ever since for about 8 years now.
Nice. Wow. Okay, so you have experience with this. You nearly have a decade of experience with D&D. Okay, I'm very interested to hear what your opinion is on this show in general. And like you said, you were originally listening to Critical Role. And do you think what's your overall opinion on Critical Role in general, like their campaigns and stuff? I just want to kind of pick your brain for a second, since you seem the first person that has a lot of experience with them.
I mean, it's interesting because I've tried watching other D&D shows, and a lot of them are hit and miss. Mm-hmm. But Critical Role is special because they're all voice actors.
Right.
So it's just like you're seeing this live performance in front of you that they're basically improving, with them doing all these different voices and performances. Especially Matt Mercer, who's like a man of 1,000 voices.
Right.
And it's just like, they're all theater kids, so they're all into this 100%, and they're just like. They're 100% committed. So, and part of the fun is it's kind of like hanging out with friends for a couple hours because they hit the story beats, but then they got fun and goof off too, and spend an episode just shopping and going into some like just BS shenanigans and stuff like that. Which the anime kind of loses a little bit of it just because they don't have time to really dedicate to that. But like it's definitely interesting seeing the difference between the anime and the actual show, seeing those contrasts.
I was doing a little research on the show, just the history of Critical Role in general, because I've always heard of it. I knew it was very successful and it was very, very popular. But I realized that, like, reading into it, their campaigns, like their stories that they tell throughout their entire series, they have to truncate them for this new Amazon series. So stuff that like they're doing, it's like in a 30-minute format, even less than that, maybe like around like 28 minutes or something per episode. And I really realized that, oh shit, they had to strip out probably so much stuff from the web series to make sure that it doesn't go on for hours and hours and hours. That's what happens with D&D. I think that's my problem with D&D, and this is a personal thing, so other people don't mind it, but I'm impatient and I want to get to the shit, but I constantly have to do all these checks and all these, the rolling of the dice and everything. And you didn't do it this time. It's like, God damn, you gotta wait your turn. And so I think like something like this, it's like, oh, it's streamlined. Very much streamlined. But I mean, you're a fan of D&D, and you clearly like the minutia of all that. You like that it can take a long time before they get to the main quest line, if you will.
I mean, it depends. Like, actually, a lot of times I find myself kind of bored when they're kind of like not getting into the meat of the story. So
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why I like the show, because it's just like, okay, it's it's all killer, no filler.
That's a good way to put it.
And it's like, and it's interesting seeing how they did it, because their campaign originally started as a home game for Liam O'Brien and Laura Bailey, who happened to share the same birthday. So Matt Mercer put together as a birthday gift for them. They played, got hooked on it, kept playing at home themselves, which there's actually a Critical Role comic that goes into those early stories.
Wow.
And then the show picks up before they actually started doing streaming on Geek and Sundry, and like the first 2 episodes. But then what's interesting is they skip over the first Underdark arc and go directly into the Briarwood arc, which is considered the most popular, which is probably why they skipped over the first one.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because I was reading, and I guess because the first 2 episodes, they're not the Briarwood arc. They focus on this. All I'll say is Dragon Quest, basically. Prototypical. A D&D, you would assume. And I read that it was almost like the prequel to the events of the Briarwood stuff. Which is something I guess they had not done that campaign before, but it was like this was specifically created for the sake of the show.
Well, it was stuff they did before they did before they streamed the show. So it was their home game stuff.
Gotcha.
Then Felicia Day, because they pitched to Felicia Day, who's running Geek and Sundry at the time. She gave them the go ahead, and they did their next campaign arc, the next story that they were doing, which was in the Underdark, which is what the first 24 episodes of their streaming was.
Right.
And
Okay.
then it goes into the Briarwood arc. But for the show, they did part of the story beforehand, because the reason they do it is because it sets up something that happens later on.
Right. No, definitely. I could totally see that. No, that's awesome that we have someone who is a big Critical Role fan and is very intimate with Dungeons and Dragons. It's fantastic.
There is one more interesting thing, though.
Please go ahead.
When they first were streaming the show, there was another cast member.
Oh yeah,
they kicked out. Well, kicked out or let go. They were never really. They never really talked about exactly what happened, but they parted ways with the person.
Do you know who they are?
It's Orion. I cannot think of his last name all of a sudden.
Okay.
But he was one of the main cast members, and he had an issue where if a falling out with the rest of the group. Let me see if I can find his character. His name, because he was also a voice actor, one of their friends.
Right.
Yeah, and basically there's a lot of rumors, which I don't want to bring up because they're just rumors.
Okay, this is speculation, alleged stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and they don't like talking about it because it's personal. It's something that happened between them and him. But they completely wrote his character out of the show.
Right. Yeah,
probably for reasons.
Interesting.
So it's definitely interesting. Yeah, how which also probably one of the reasons why they skipped the first story arc.
Oh, because he's such a central figure to it.
For the most part, but also he ended up parting ways with them at the beginning of the Briarwood arc.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. No. Thanks for having that detail. See, that's something that I just don't know about. So for Critical Role fans, it's like, well, that obviously, and so they would yell at me, but thank God you hear Deadpool to tell them all that. Appreciate that. Thank you. No, that's fascinating to me. Well, you know what? Moving on from you, Deadpool, we'll continue talking about this because I really want to hear what you think of this adaptation since you've been listening to them for so long. Emily, what's your experience with D&D and Critical Role? Emily is gone. Emily is left.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
Trying to finish my blunt. Sorry.
No problem. But no, I just wanted to ask you, what's your experience of D&D and Critical Role?
My experience with D&D, I tried to get into playing D&D years ago when I was like a teenager, but there was just like a lot of assholes and gatekeeping going on back in the day. So it kind of completely turned me off of playing it myself. But I have a lot of respect for people who do play D&D like yourself and whatnot. Like I don't have the patience for it. I have ADHD and I could barely sit down and chill for a freaking half an hour most days, let alone play D&D for several hours. But I do enjoy watching videos like Joe Cat's Crap Guide to D&D and Man Shorts videos. Like they'll like do like the Christmas shopping, like just like a couple months ago. There's like all kinds of just really crazy, funny, like real life scenarios, but they added a D&D twist to it, and it's just they're funny short videos to watch. But I enjoy D&D in that way, but I can't sit and watch several hours of it.
Are you familiar with Critical Role? Have you ever seen their stuff before?
I tried watching it back in the day when they were first getting like really popular, their live streams and whatnot, but I couldn't get really into it. I kept getting, distracted or finding better things to do. It's just like just don't have the patience to try and play D&D.
Gotcha. Austin, what about yourself, sir? What's your experience of D&D and Critical Role?
So I have a more similar experience to Deadpool, where for the last, I want to say like 4 years, I've been playing D&D. I've been in a few campaigns. The first one I didn't really plan out because people left. The second one I did, we went for a good while, and then basically COVID and life stuff happened, and then we did another one we did for a year until we all died, basically, and then now we're doing a new one because we all died, basically.
Oh wow! All right.
So yeah, I've been playing a while, and I got really into it. And I've, in terms of like watching D&D stuff, I've watched Harmon Quest, which was the Dan Harmon D&D show. I listened to all of the Adventure Zone, which is the McElroy's, if you know those, like their D&D podcast. Trying to remember any of the other ones. There's a lot. A few other ones. I used to listen to the Rooster Teeth one. I can't remember the name of it now.
Oh, I know what you talk about. I remember that.
And yeah, a bunch of them, and I really enjoyed it. And I've listened to some of Critical Role. I've watched a bit of the newer season. It's just in terms of content, and it's like every video is 4 hours. It's 4 hours, and it's hard to watch. Yeah, it's intimidating.
No, I get that. Well, this is interesting. No, it's cool that we have two big D&D fans in here. That's nice. I'm sorry. I was going to continue. I have a question for you, but keep going.
Oh, I was just going to tell you, Chris. You should have just been a way of the drunken fist. That sounds like a way better fit for you than a rogue. You basically get drunk and do kung fu. That was.
Oh shit! Oh, like Drunken Master. I could have been like Jackie Chan. God damn it! Well, I didn't know. I was just like, Revan sounds like an elf name. I'll go with that. I'll be a rogue, but I'm like a shitty rogue. I know.
The good thing I
had bad D&D people with me. They didn't help me at all.
The thing I like about D&D and to sort, it's very in years now since they've improved. I think they've made it a lot more open. They've got a little bit. It's a lot more. It's like very customizable. Like any race can be any class. Any mobility, blah 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 blah. Like, and they kind of fix things to make things a little more fair and balanced. And to Deadpool's point, and I think something you didn't really say was, and no offense, was like Matt Mercer. Like the Critical Role has like had an impact on the game. It's Matt Mercer literally made multiple classes that are officially in the game.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that. And so Matt Mercer, people might be unfamiliar with him. He's a video game voice actor. He does several voices in this show. He's the voice of Leon S. Kennedy in a number of Resident Evil games and adaptations and a ton of other stuff, like a lot of these other people are. So that's I wanted to ask you a question because, obviously Critical Role is now, it's the biggest, I think one of the biggest successes of D&D out there outside of like video game stuff. But can you see, because you mentioned a whole bunch of other D&D players and campaigners and shows. could you see with the success of something like Vox Machina just taking off right now? I'm already getting ordered a second season. Could you see other places, other studios looking at some of these
already
other
doing
people?
that. Like,
they are.
There's an Adventure Zone show. They're doing a movie. I know, just like a Dungeons and Dragon movie, but there's a few other ones I know of, but I can't think of them. But like, there are other ones. I just think Critical Role is probably the biggest, because they have the talent. Like, they have people who are pretty big in the voice acting industry doing it, and all seem to be really enjoying it, even after like so long. Because I mean, this started in 2005. I'm like,
wow, 2005. Holy shit.
I mean, not 2015. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, whoa, they've been doing this for this long. Oh my god, I had no idea. Well, but still, I mean, hey, to see that much success in less than 7 years. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So no, because I was just fascinated with because I obviously know there's a lot of people that do the same thing that Critical Role does, and if they were seeking opportunities to adapt their work, so that's awesome. I think we're going to see that now. We're going to see a proliferation because of the success of this show. But thank you for bringing the knowledge to this, you and Deborah. Kazfe, I want to ask you, what's your experience with D&D and Critical Role in general?
Well, I'm really not that familiar with Critical Role. I went into the show fairly blind, actually, but it was interesting to read about the story behind it. I didn't realize they were adapting so much material. As far as D&D, I haven't played very much of it, but I was an assistant director for a community college production of She Kills Monsters, which is a play about D&D, and it has a lot of fantasy elements to it. It was a really cool experience to observe and help out with that. It's given me a deep appreciation for it, even though I haven't had a lot of chances to do anything hands-on with the game.
That's cool that you did a theater adaptation of someone who has played Dungeons and Dragons and all the fantastic elements of that. That wow. Everyone, this is so cool because everyone's bringing a different experience of D&D to today's episode. That's really cool. Wow, I never would have thought that they would do something like that. That's really cool. That's awesome. And now I'm Xavier. What about yourself? Your experience with D&D and Critical Role?
So I have no experience with D&D. Not because I don't like it, just because I didn't know anyone playing D&D, and so the only time I would see anything like that is that if I went to the comic book store and I saw like the games on the shelf. And as for Critical Role, that's another one. Like, I never watched the show, but I always heard about like the people you mentioned. Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey being on the show, and so that always made me like go like, oh, let me like check it out. But I never like sat down and actually watched the whole thing. But I did have a question though about D&D. Is there a difference between D&D and like fantasy? Like, is D&D like a genre, or like because when I saw this show, I just thought like, oh, this is just a show with a fantasy setting. But now being here, it says like, oh, this is like a D&D type show. So I'm confused on what the difference is, or is there a difference?
Could I answer this?
Please go ahead.
So D&D is basically it's owned by Wizards of the Coast. It's basically just a rule set that you can use any. This is something I was kind of going to bring up, but like D&D, it isn't just like pure fantasy, like actual Dungeons and Dragons. There can be vampires. There can be eldritch horrors of like Cthulhu. There can be like more nautical pirate stuff. There's like space stuff. I know there's like crazy like carnivals and like more like the Thing style out in like basically in the frozen desert trying to hunt like a monster. It's like pretty varied in like settings. There's like even a Mad Max kind of like post-apocalyptic world. Yeah. So like when people think of D&D, they think of just, oh, it's dragons and Jeremy Irons screaming and Martin. Isn't Martin Lawrence in that also?
No, it's one of the oh shit.
It's the one of the
Marlon Wayans. It's Marlon Wayans.
Oof.
Or one of the Wayans brothers.
The M.
Yeah.
Like but yes, people think about that bad movie, but it's a lot more like it's just, but basically D&D is just like a rule set. It's like Pathfinder. That's
Oh,
a
And it
okay.
different game.
indulges in multiple genres, everything from horror to fantasy to science fiction. That's what makes it so fun, I think, and why it's obviously had the impact that it's had on video games as well. Since video games also follow the rules of what D&D has created before. So yeah, it's interesting how it's been able to cross into so many multiple mediums. So even though people like to say like, you're not a fan, I'm not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, oh, but do you play like fantasy games like Dragon Age? And they're like, yeah, of course. And then you might like D&D. At least give it a shot. Again, it's so I'm great. I'm very happy that we have people of various experience levels with Dungeons and Dragons, whether it comes to very intimate or even none at all, because then it's going to make the reactions to the show fascinating to me, because I think now we can go ahead and transition over. But anyone else wanted to speak on D&D or Critical Role in general before we move on to the show proper? Holy shit, this has been the year of fantastic openings for various shows, like Peacemaker. I mean, that's by far probably my favorite opening this year. But this one, I love the animation for it and how it showcases all the various characters and their abilities and their movesets. But I will say, when I first watched the trailer, while I like the animation, one of the things that was bothering me, wasn't hitting with me, was the humor and the jokes. I felt like if I speak, I'll get to the more positives, but the thing that is kind of bothering me consistently throughout watching the show so far is I feel like the humor is very hit and miss. Like sometimes like, oh, that's pretty funny, or they keep kind of just like telling the same joke over and over and over again. And that did get a little annoying to me. However, I actually like the more serious aspects of the show, getting into the history of characters like, Percival or Percy, who is this the last of his lineage of this very royal wealthy family whose family was disposed of and killed by like these vampires. I like the more serious stuff, or even you have Laura Bailey's Vex, and you have the person Liam O'Brien who plays her brother Vax. I like the relationship and the tragedy surrounding the circumstances where a dragon killed their mother. I like it's the serious stuff I like, and the relationships, how they bounce off each other. It's the humor to me which feels very modern, which I get. That's a part of D&D. It's like they kind of incorporate the more modern humor sensibilities of the player itself, but that wasn't really working for me for the most part. But the more serious aspects of the show and the lore, and there's something else I noticed too while watching, is like I could tell, even though I've limited experience of D&D, I could tell when they were rolling the dice to do those checks, if you will, where like, we need to open a door. I can't open the door. How about you try? I can't open the door either. I was like, oh shit, this is when they were probably rolling the dice during the web series and things. They just streamlined it for the animated show. I was like, oh, that's where I thought was funny. That's where I liked the humor, because I was like, oh, I see what's actually happening here. Whereas something maybe the dialogue written for the characters, the jokes written for the characters, wasn't always hitting for me. But overall, I mean, I am liking the show. I have seen the first 6 episodes. Some of the animation, they do cut some corners with it, where they do that. I don't know if this is the same studio that does Invincible, because it looks like their animation style. Just like I'm looking at the character designs, like you look like the Robert Kirkman's Invincible. They do use some CGI in this series for some of the creatures and action scenes. So it's like, okay, that's definitely not matching up with what I'm also seeing. And I know why they're doing that. They're doing that to save money in order to keep costs down. But it does take me out a little bit, and that's a common thing that's been used across the board. Even a very successful show that I love, like Invincible. Overall, I'm liking the series. I want to see where it goes, but I'm hoping that they can punch up the humor a little bit more, and improve upon that. But we'll go ahead and actually let's start with one of the people that has had a lot of D&D experience, and that's Deadpool. What is your general thoughts so far on the legend of Vox Machina?
Well, I also backed the Kickstarter, so
Okay.
I got to watch the premiere like 4 days earlier before it was released. So I got to watch the first 2 episodes, and which was interesting because I never got to see the first 2 the events of the first 2 episodes when they were doing the show, because I was predated some streaming. So it's interesting seeing that aspect, but I'm loving it. Like, this is exactly what I was hoping for. And it kind of talked about why some of the jokes might not be hitting for you as much, is because they're references to the stream
Right.
of them streaming. So a lot of them are inside jokes and like references to the jokes happening when they were streaming. So for me, I'm a little nostalgic for it because it's just like, oh, I remember that joke. And it's just, and it was them just kind of goofing around with each other. So I think if you go with it with that in mind, it might be a little bit funnier for you.
Gotcha. No, I could totally understand where they might be referencing common things that were in the campaigns that they were doing beforehand. I mean, it's very much a. I feel like even if you didn't know anything about D&D or Critical Role, I think you could watch the show and be fine. But there definitely is the thing where it's like, well, who the hell's that? It's similar comparison. Like, I know who Cad Bane is in Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett episode 6. People are like, what the fuck's the blue guy? It's like, well, you don't understand. And so it's like one of those. I think it's one of those scenarios here. It's one of those situations. And so I completely understand what you're saying. And for people that are getting those references, they must be just thoroughly enjoying it, like yourself.
Yeah, and it's sort of a balancing act they have to do.
Yes.
They have to put the red meat out there for the fans because they're the ones who backed it and got this thing made in the first place. But they also want it to be open-ended enough for people who, like you guys, who like most of you, who've never heard of Critical Role or have any experience with it whatsoever, who are basically coming into this fresh.
Mm-hmm. Very fresh. Very much so.
The scene you're referencing about the door, that's actually a very funny part, which in the chat I posted the video somebody made of it, of them just repeatedly struggling to open a door.
Right.
Which becomes an ongoing joke throughout their campaigns, where whenever a door comes up, they just happen to roll poorly and it just goes terribly.
I remember, and the thing is, I just thought about my experience with D&D, as limited as it is, but I remember doors and how you'd have to have those. And I was the lockpick guy. I remember having to fucking roll if I would have the necessary number in order to unlock the door. And so I was like, I totally see, like, I can look at the strings, if you will, the structure of this episode and what they're specifically referencing. But that I didn't mind. That I thought that was the funny part, because like, oh, I see what this really is, and I think that was pretty cool. But it's more like the dialogue, some of the dialogue. Like the Scanlan character, he's constantly just referring to his dick and making modern references. Which again, I mean, I feel like if you have a lot of intimate knowledge of these characters and watch the web series, then you love stuff like that. But where it's more hit and miss for someone who is coming into it fresh, like myself. But any other thoughts, though, on your general thoughts on the series so far, the characters, how they're adapting them?
Oh, I think it's great. I think because they're able to, with this, they're able to go through and kind of like refine a lot of stuff too. Because like I said, a lot of the stuff with Camping One was a lot of them just trying to figure out how this stuff was working. So with this, they're able to go back and kind of just like edit and change things to make the story flow better.
Right.
Well, I'm definitely interested to see how like the future season is going to be, because Campaign 1 has a defined ending. So I'm wondering how much they're going to stick to the various arcs. And once they reach the end of Campaign 1, are they going to go into Campaign 2 and eventually 3, which they're currently on right now?
Okay, yeah, because this did get greenlit for a second season. I don't know how many episodes are in this series, because so far they've released 6. This is the first. Here it goes.
13.
The first season consists of 12 episodes, which were released in batches of 3. And so we have 2 more weeks then where they're releasing another 3 episodes. Because I will admit, even though I'm mixed on maybe some of the writing for the show, like the animation, I think, for the most part is very beautiful, and I do like the characters, and I want to keep watching it. This is not like, okay, well, I did the 6, now I'm done. Like I still like it. Just some overall issues with it. So yeah, hey man, like I said, they got a second season going. So, and who knows, they might even, I wouldn't be surprised if they do this. They start doing just new stuff that might not be like even based on some of their previous campaigns. Like I would not be surprised by that, but again, we'll see.
Yeah, that's the part I'm definitely going to think is interesting. Speaking about the animation, it's definitely interesting to see like a Western animation show that definitely takes its inspiration from anime.
Oh yeah.
Because the character of Keyleth, created by Marisha Ray, she was a huge Avatar fan. Her character is basically Aang. Like you have the Shari, who represent each of the 4 elements: fire, air, water, earth. So like she was a huge Avatar fan. So when she created her character, she wanted a character similar to the Avatar.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the show takes a lot of heavy inspiration from Avatar, even from just when they were doing the stream. And now from the animation style, which definitely has a heavy anime, which is interesting because basically all the main cast are involved in doing voice over work with animation, various animes over the years. So you can definitely see how they wanted that inspiration in the show and how it created its kind of animated aesthetic.
I can totally see that. I can see the comparisons to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Just the character expressions and how they're moving around. I mean, Avatar has had such a tremendous impact across animation for, God, at this point, the last 15 or so years. And yeah, I could definitely see the design similarities in the characters and how they move and how they're just the facial structure. I was like, I totally. And I think, Invincible owes that to Avatar as well, especially with the choreography of the fight scenes, which I think is spectacular. But any other general thoughts before we move on?
From Deadpool or just from anyone?
Oh, Deadpool.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, the voice cast is great. Like, because before it was just the main cast and then Matt doing all the other voices, but they got a pretty good, stellar voice cast to pick up these other NPC characters. Like Stephen Root is one of them.
That's great.
I cannot think of his name. The guy who does Cyborg in Teen Titans.
Oh, I recognize his voice as soon as I heard him.
Kari. Which, funny enough, he was actually a guest on Critical Role, the stream. He played a character before, so it's interesting to see how they're going to incorporate some of their guest stars, like Wilfred Dale, and the woman who does the voice for the Major in Ghost in the Shell. I can't think of her name either.
They have a lot of they have Stephanie Beatrice from Brooklyn. They have Gina Torres in this. Don McManigan is in this. Gray Griffin, as you said.
The Hound.
Yeah. Even the rapper Logic does a couple small voices. He's friends with the cast.
Oh, that's funny.
So they have a stellar voice cast.
Oh yeah,
most of them are just fit the characters perfectly.
Like these voice actors, you've heard, even if you don't know their names, you've heard their voices across all sorts of things. I mean, I could just recognize them because I've watched so much animation. I played so many videos. Like I know Laura Bailey's voice, even when she's putting on an accent. Like that's Laura Bailey. I knew as soon as I heard her. Travis Willingham, who was funny enough, her husband. I could just or Gray Griffin. I mean, she's doing like a Azula for the villainous character of Galaya Briarwood.
Yeah, so that pretty much covers my general thoughts. I don't want to take up all the.
No, it's interesting. I want to hear because hey, you and Osnick especially have a lot of experience with this, so I want to pick your brain about it. But Osnick, so far, what are your general thoughts on the Vox Machina animated series?
So I think it's really good. My really only issue is sometimes, like you said, certain monsters look like they came out of that really bad Berserk CGI show from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I'm like, but other than that, I think it's a really good show. I think, again, like you said, very well voice act. It's still very weird hearing Sam Riegel, even as a kid. He played like Donatello. He's been in so many things, and hearing him sing a song about pulling his beads of love.
Oh, sure.
Which is a great song, but it's so weird. It throws your brain for a loop. But overall, I think something you guys didn't really cover is this show is a hard R. There is violence, sex, and I mean, I don't really think in the main thing it's violent, but this is you see brain, you see blood, you see people getting smushed. It is just violent, and I think it works in a certain part. I don't know if it works as well as in Invincible, but I do like certainly how it's not afraid to go there, and I think it also works well with Amazon's brand with this and The Boys and other things. But I was just kind of surprised by how violent it was.
Yeah, the first episode opens with this other group that's like Vox Machina, the prototypical, Dungeons and Dragons mercenaries, and they're all fucking slaughtered in the most horrifying way. So if you thought this was it's maybe a PG-13 animated series, no, this is a hard R. Yeah, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of tits, there's a lot of references to genitalia across the board. It's done for both comedic purposes and for purposes to terrify you and disgust you.
Mm-hmm. And I think those are some of the best moments, are just the terrifying moments, and especially in the fourth episode with the ghosts.
Oh, I love that
and
episode.
Just the body horror. It is body horror, basically. Yes, what it is.
Yeah, they fuck those people up. What those specters are, those zombie ghosts. I was like, Jesus. And even the characters, even the main characters, like, yeah, they're healed or whatever. They get really fucked up though, too. People vomiting up blood or having chunks of meat missing. You know, it's a funny gag, I think, in like episode 1 where Grog, who is this half man, half giant character, is like, is that supposed to happen? Whereas like this meat is just leaking out of him. This blood keeps squirting on everybody.
He's a Goliath, though.
Goliath? No, that's okay, man. That's good. I remember they said he was half giant. I mean, that's all I remember. So.
They're like giants. They're like they're like big. Yeah.
Yeah, they're technically they be considered half.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, please come in there. Yeah, they say he's a Goliath. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, and they say he's a Goliath barbarian. But I know they mentioned he was half giant in the show. That's why we have the D&D experts right here. They can correct me. Please go ahead.
Like you guys said, I think Castlevania also is a big influence on this season, especially with what's kind of going on. And I think
vampires.
That's sort of the vampire, but just also just like the Dark City and kind of like a big looming castle, and just even some of the how the villains are designed.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this animation studio. I mean, it's multiple. It's it's produced by Critical Role Productions, another animation studio called Titmouse Inc. I think that's how you say the name. And I don't know if they. Oh, and I think they. Oh, there you go. You know, it's funny. You guys brought up Avatar: The Last Airbender. They worked on that. They worked on the main title sequence from 2005 to 2008. So that was them. So there you go. Of the designs, you can right there.
Done a lot.
Baked in. So yeah, no, I'm looking at they've done all sorts of things. They've done short films. They've done feature films. Most recently worked on Wish Dragon. There you go. Teen Titans Go, the movie. So yeah, they clearly have experience of this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were influenced by something like Castlevania, because again, that's been an extraordinarily popular anime.
Well, I also was looking. I'm like, oh, the executive producer of this was also. Did you ever watch? I know you said you watched. Did you ever watch a show called Motor City?
No.
It was a show on Disney XD that was kind of with that Tron show they did. It was like kind of it was only like a season, but it got canceled. It was sort of like post-apocalyptic Mad Max meets like kind of a cyberpunk. It was a pretty interesting show. Anyway, the guy who made that produced this, and I think does a lot. It does a lot. It does a lot. It's like very stylized, but very like flat. It's like Flash, but stylized.
Yeah, I get you. No. I mean, there's clearly a lot of talented people working on this show, and when the animation is at its best, I think it's at a lot of these, combat sequences. The choreography is amazing. Any other thoughts, Austin?
I think the first 2 episodes were probably just the weakest, I think as they've kind of gone along, and as you said, they've gotten a lot better, especially when it's like the more drama and the more like
character-based stuff.
Character-based stuff, but also giving it to like more like, I think the action's gotten a lot better. I think I think the best part for me has just been the horror and just like the creepiness of it, like just them going into like that town, and it's just like completely dead and barren, and just like these horror abominations, and like you see they pull a Pirates thing, and you see like some like people hung up and
lynched,
and just
done up as the characters of our main characters, as to strike fear into them and also mock them. So no, it's I'm liking a lot of it, and I think as it goes on, especially when we learn more about these characters, and I was like, oh shit, some of these characters are they're holding some dark secrets, like Percy especially. I love his whole design. He uses this. What do they call it? It's not like they don't call it a gun. I mean, they call it a gun, but they call it like it's a specific pepper box gun. Is that what they call it? Pepper box gun. And there's there's a secret to him, and something that's clearly something's off about him, and I really like that, and his design, and at times he wears this Dark Ages doctor mask, like during the times of plague. Yeah, that's it, plague doctor. Thank you. Plague Doctor mask. I'm like, oh, I love this and what's going on there. So, and I imagine we'll learn more as the series goes on. But yeah, as they get deeper and they get more into the characters and the relationships, and I'm really starting to like it more. Whereas, yeah, I agree, Austin. I think the first 2 episodes, I like them. I like them fine. It was just that's where it was more about the humor, and I think we're trying to make the audience laugh. and kind of get them on board, and then we can get into the serious shit.
Yeah, like also trying to like introduce these characters and trying to introduce like what their personality is.
Yes.
I also felt like they kind of just solved the problem pretty easily. It's like, oh, okay, well that's kind of anticlimactic.
I feel like that's the dice rolling again. We're like, oh, you had a really good roll when you solved that thing very easily. He's like, I can see it there, which is based on my little experience with D&D. But moving on from Austinic, Casfe, what have been your general thoughts so far on the Legend of Vox Machina?
Well, I was initially thrown by how vulgar it was and everything, although that first scene does do a pretty good job of letting you know that this isn't your typical fun fantasy type show. And I think what I like about those first 2 episodes is the fact that there's a lot of character development there. I won't spoil what happens, but it gets really serious really quick. And
Sure.
I guess, I don't know, I've been watching a lot of adult animation type stuff lately, so I guess I do occasionally like watching shows where the characters are kind of assholes, but then it slowly humanizes them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, clearly, the first 2 episodes are just meant to acclimate you to the world itself and what the character dynamics are. And yes, it does get serious. I think by the end of that first episode, it's like, all right, yeah, we were all laughing and doing dick jokes and referring to past adventures, but here is an entire village which is fucking slaughtered. And look at all these dead, disemboweled children. It's like, oh, okay, all right, we can get serious when we need to, and I think it has been, and that's when it's been strongest. How many episodes have you seen so far going forward? Have you liked it as they got more serious?
Yeah, I like them so far. I've seen all of them. I would say at first I wasn't sure cuz I agree about the first problem being solved being fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, each episode started going by more quickly as we got more into people's backstories, and especially Percy, like you said. And the way that last episode ended really hooked me, where I'm like, oh crap, another show that I got to keep up with. There's so much that's like taking up my time in a good way, but still.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like, even with, my schedule, I'm just so busy, but I do want to keep watching this. It's like, God damn it, they got me. Despite my my few complaints overall, like I'm really enjoying this. This is another one added to the to the pile whenever I have the time. But yeah, it's I think as the show is continuing to go on, I think it's going to keep getting better, and it has been. I've been noticing the improvements, and maybe I'll just get used to the crass humor. I think sometimes it's the hit and miss thing. Like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like some of my favorite jokes have just been the interplay between some of these characters, and it's not just relying on the more modern references. But I know that's a part of Critical Role. I know that's a part of D&D, and people bring that to it, and that's why people love it so much, I feel. Any other thoughts? We're gonna move on to M. Xavier.
Just as far as the modern references and everything, it makes a lot more sense now that I've learned more about Critical Role itself, but also I guess once it happened for the first time, mainly with what's his name? I think it's Scanlan.
Scanlan, yeah.
I don't know, like I said about the fact that I watch some adult cartoons that kind of do that sometimes, I figured it's a stylistic choice.
Clearly. No, I agree. That's just the type of humor that they'll have throughout this show and later on to the series. That's still on full display. And it's not that I even hate the character of Scanlan, and even Trev Willingham's Grog, the Goliath barbarian. It's just I feel like they're leaning so heavily on that type of humor from them, which makes them, in my opinion, not the most interesting characters in the show. But some people might feel differently about that. But thank you for sharing your opinions on it so far. And Xavier, about yourself, your impressions of the Legend of Vox Machina.
Yeah, so so far I think I I like it. I do really like it. I think that the some of the complaints that people have brought up, like about the animation, I think is there. Like one thing I remember is I think it was I think it was Vax, where I think they show a scene of him jumping out the window, and it's just him sliding rather than, I don't know, having like any type of like movement. Like I don't even think his cape or his coat was moving.
Those shortcuts.
And yeah, exactly. So I think that so yeah, that's about the animation. I personally think that I wish there was more character development. I know some people have mentioned that there was a lot, but for me, I didn't think there was a lot. I know as the episodes progress, we're getting more. Like obviously we're getting more about Percival and I think there was another character too that I can't think of, but we're getting more as the show goes on. But
Pike,
I just wish
were you thinking of Pike?
Yep, Pike was another one. Yeah, because I love what's going on with her. Like in the first episode, she's like, maybe we should be good guys, and then they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And then everything that happens with everything that happens with her, I'm like really enjoying. But also, it's just like and I think someone mentioned this before, but like for me, it's like we're just thrown in this world, and it's like these are our characters, and it's like, well, why are they together? Like it seems like Pike and Groog, they are. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but like Groog, they
Grog.
have Grog. Thanks. They have a connection. Like it seems like they've been around for a while, and it's like, well, then what's happening with them? Like, well, how did they join this group? How did Percival join this group? And so I wish there was more of that explained, but I'm sure that as the show progressed, they'll explain that. But overall, right now, I do like it, and I think it's a great idea to release it in 3 episodes because they kind of feel like arcs, kind of.
No, definitely. No, they do. It's like even these, even with the initial first 3, which dealt with the dragon and that 2-parter, and then that episode then sets up what happens in episode 3 in regards to the Briarwoods. Like I liked all that, and we get more into Percy, and also that episode 3 kind of acts as an epilogue to the events of the previous 2 episodes. I was like, oh, okay, this is where they get the mansion and everything like that. So I like that, but. No, like you, and we can go ahead and spin off right into this good discussion of some of the characters who we liked, who we didn't like. But as you mentioned, Percy for me right now is probably my favorite character in the show, just because we're learning more about him, but there's still an air of mystery to him. Like, what exactly is he? That's the thing that is kind of fascinating. I mean, what did he do to himself to make him this I don't know, this force of vengeance or whatever? There's clearly something mystical with him, despite being the most science-based of them all, using his pepper box gun, if you will. It's like, okay, there's something like he's giving me Punisher vibes almost at times, and I really like that with a magical twist, which I thought was really cool in his quest for vengeance for his family. So he's definitely my favorite character. And I also like, as you brought up before, Pike Trickfoot, who is voiced by Ashley Johnson. In case you don't know Ashley Johnson, you've heard her voice in anything from Infinity Train to the Last of Us series. She plays Ellie in those games. I like her and her kind of crisis of faith, where she is a gnome cleric, and she has this goddess of Everlight who grants her these abilities, but due to an encounter with the Briarwood vampire family, that's severed, and we don't know why, and she's trying to figure that out. And so I like her little side quest that she's going on, kind of separated from the group. When it comes to some of the other characters, like I like the dynamics of Vex, Laura Bailey, one of the half elves, and with her brother Vax, and how clearly they're super. Okay, I will admit, and I don't know if anyone else got these vibes. I'm like, are these two kind of like, is this Jamie and this is a serious situation? I'm like, they're very handsy. They're always touching. They always give each other. I was like, is this gonna be a big reveal? But I think they're just super, super close because of the death of their mother and their hatred towards their father. I was like, okay, because she's even like, when there's a whole thing with Vax and the Kiki Kalith, voiced by Mercer Ray. What's her name?
Keyleth.
Where she is a kind of like an elven druid, I believe, able to control plants and transform into various creatures. Like clearly they're setting up like a romance between Vax and her. But, Vex is like, don't be looking at my brother that way. Only I have my eyes for him. I saw it as that, but I think it was just overprotectiveness. But I like that. I like that dynamic of the group. And then it's really the only two characters I'm pretty mixed on because they're very much they're for the sake of the humor, which is Scanlan, who is this gnome bard who always gets into trouble, mostly because of his dick, or he says something very sarcastic.
Chris.
I know. No, you're right. That's true. You're right. But there's some bards that I've liked better. What's his name? Dandelion from Yasker from The Witcher. But that is what they're known for. You're correct. But he brings in a lot of the modern humor, and that kind of thing. And then you have the other one again, Travis Willingham, who voices the character of Grog, who's very much the stereotypical big dumb barbarian-esque character. And he says he says fuck a lot. Probably more than anyone. He's always exasperated much of the time. But there is a sensitive side to him, clearly of his connection to Pike, which as was brought up earlier, I want to see what that relationship was initially. Hopefully they'll do more flashbacks, kind of what they're doing with Percival right now, which I think have been really good. But yeah, for the most part, I like the characters. A couple ones I feel like are just kind of underwritten or they're just there for the sake of humor. But did anyone else, this is just kind of opening up now, did anyone want to talk about a character that they felt that they connected with personally or that you're really interested in or you like the design of them?
I really love both the character design and the character of Keyleth.
Mm-hmm.
I like that initially she's shown as very nervous and awkward, but at the same time super, super powerful, and she saves the group so many times. And I like how there are parallels drawn between her and the character of Pike, who is shown to be so strong at first, but she also has her own conflicts.
I really, because they call her Kiki, right? That's like her little nickname.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah. I just love her old power set because one, she's like she has the powers of Poison Ivy, basically. Well, with Poison Ivy was a good guy. That's what it is. And I just love her design when she saves. I mean, she's pulling moves from, you can almost say, from different like movies and things, like wrapping everyone in this giant vine ball and thing, kind of like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, or transforming when she gets angry, transforming into like a werewolf creature. And I was like, yeah, you never know with her. It's like she has so much power, but it's her inexperience and it's the burden of her people on her shoulders that initially shows her to be like, oh, she's somewhat meek and nervous, as you said. But, if she just, works on that, then yeah, she's probably the most powerful member of that group. Just by what she's been able to do and what she's been able to summon. But I do, and the voice actress for Keela, I think, is great. Marisha Ray. And I like her her dynamic with Vax and how she's unsure of like whether she has these feelings or not. It's adorable. And I also like Pike. I think Pike's great, and her little relationship with Grog that's the best of Grog, is when they're together, when they have that back and forth. I forget what episode it was in. I think it was when they're still at their keep and he goes to check on her, and he's not being just, he legitimately is not there to be just an idiot. He's there to actually ask her, are you okay? And I like that when he's more sensitive. That brings out the best in him. Anyone else has any other characters that they really liked in the series so far, or that stand out to them? No one?
No, I was gonna say I didn't know if anyone was gonna talk, but I do like the characters of Delilah and Silas. I really like their introduction. Just taking a fucking tree and whacking people. I was like, that's great. And then and then just that whole fight scene I thought was really cool too. And also they just give off like this, this power couple vibe where like and where they're like, just very evil, like what they do to those the scene when they do the things to the people. I'm like, oh, this is
those villagers.
The villagers. So I was like, yeah, this is pretty crazy. But I really like their design, really like their power set and everything about them.
I guess because we did have an initial villain in the dragon who it was a mystery surrounding that character. I mean, you'll be able to figure out who that dragon is almost. I'm like, that's that guy. They're trying to throw me for a loop. They're trying to make a red herring, but I know exactly who that goddamn dragon is. And I guessed it correctly. I don't want to say who it is for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. But yeah, these two, the Briarwood's lady and Lord Briarwood, they're very much setting them up, at least I think for the last several episodes, as our main villains for this first season, and their connection to Percy, I think, makes them even more intimidating and more evil based on what they've been able to do. Plus, I just like the idea of just vampire lords. I think it's just because of watching Castlevania and rewatching it for audio commentaries and video commentaries for my Patreon that I'm just really into the design. They feel, as you said, very Castlevania-esque and everything about them. And I love how they have them move in animation, like, whereas Lord Briarwood, he's more of like a physical fighter, that kind of thing. They're grabbing big things and swishing people with it. His wife is clearly into necromancy, able to summon these horrible specters that do grotesque things to the living. So I really like them as the villains, and they're weird, their assistants, their servants. I don't know what. There's this one guy. His name is he's Captain something. He's like a little toad man. Like, I don't know how. It's like I don't know what.
Looks
what
like a
creature
trash
he
man,
is.
basically.
He's a trash man. That's what he is. He's so gross. And he was prominently featured in the last, I think, 2 episodes, where the Vox Machina are trying to free this rebel captain from his clutches, and he's just so fucking despicable. And despite his height, he's still vicious, especially with that hammer. So I really like that. I'm just kind of seeing all these new fantasy species that I'm not really familiar with, and making them cool or intimidating in a way.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any like favorite characters they wanted to mention, or something that stood out? Or maybe we can go on to like moments that kind of stood out to you in this show that was like, oh, I want to see more of that.
Go
Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I agree with you in the most. I think Scanlan is the one who probably isn't working, but I feel like they're going to do something where something really dark or fucked up happens to him. So, so it kind of makes light of it later. Not to say but I do enjoy Grog, again, like you, Pike, but I also like when they were in the cart and he was just crying because he's like, oh, I know she'll be fine. I don't know if we'll be fine without her,
Mm-hmm.
Like there was some, it seemed like he needed Pike more than even he realized, and he's just like a very tall. And even though I think he has dumb moments, I think he's very funny, and I think the humor works a lot with him comparatively, just because it's either like very physical or very much just so stupid but relatable to a lot of people who've had to deal with like stupid players.
I feel like, and maybe well, you could speak to that. I guess, Osnick, as you said, and Deadpool chime in here as well. Like, he's supposed to be that almost like first time D&D player. It's just like, fuck, come on, like that, just because his dialogue just feels that way to me. And I will agree with you, Osnick. I feel like, even though I feel like they just repeat some of the same jokes with him, how he's used for humor, I think, is better than Scanlan, personally.
Mm-hmm.
But
especially.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going, please.
Especially in that second episode when they do when he rages as a and the animation on him, I think that makes it
great.
up, just because that how well that is.
Again, the fight choreography in these episodes it's probably the best aspect of them. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is beautiful to watch. And also, I have something to reveal too at the end, which I think might have improved the action sequences for me, as that probably improves everything. But Deadpool, did you have any thoughts on, like, is that the reason why Grog is the way he is because he's supposed to be kind of that exasperated, first time D&D player? Or am I around just reading into it?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, Travis kind of wanted. Well, keep in mind, a lot of some of their stuff is based on their stats. Like, Grog has low intelligence, but super strong and tough. But you will get more character development with Grog. That stuff does happen later on. They actually do go into a little bit of Grog's backstory with stuff that will eventually happen. Don't want to get into too many details.
Sure. With Pike as well, would that happen to kind of explain their dynamic? Is that
it definitely goes deeper into Grog's backstory, which is some of the best like moments during the streams. One of the interesting with Pike, though, is there's a reason why she's not with the group because of the streams. Because at the time, Ashley Johnson had to go to New York to film Blind Spot, so she wasn't. She was going to be inconsistently with the group. She wasn't going to be playing with them. That's why Pike's doing her own little side quest. It's because during the show she couldn't be there for that quest line. She had to go to New York City.
No, that makes sense.
So, but it's definitely interesting how they're fleshing that stuff out, because we never get to really see what she was doing at the time.
Well, that's cool. That's fascinating to me. They're able to address, like, literally when a member was not able to show up, or because they had work or something. Like, okay, we're still going to give that person something to do, and expand upon them. Like, I like her little side quest that she's going on right now. I want to see more of that. Her crisis of faith. That's interesting to me because I like her character. I like Ashley Johnson in general. I think she's a great voice actress.
Yeah, and I'm since you guys are all excited about stuff personally, like, man, I can't wait for you guys to see what happens because there's a really good payoff.
Is it? Okay, I figured because there's just they keep hinting at it and they keep showing more with him, and he's so, man, I'll tell you, Percy does some cold-blooded shit in this show. I was like, Jesus. Now, I imagine he's most likely right about, like, anyone who works at the Briarwoods, they deserve what they get. But there's this one kind of pathetic character who is like this coach, this coach driver. The Briarwood's coach driver, who's like this kid or whatever. He's like this emaciated blonde-haired kid. It's like, I hope you guys like that I did that for you. I did just as you requested, Lady Briarwood. But man, what Percy, all I'll say is Percy confronts that character. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, and blows his hand clean off, which is what he did in the stream. And yeah, they get into that character's back, which I don't know if they'll get into the anime. But yeah, he didn't have much of a choice. He's basically being held hostage by the Briarwoods.
Right. I figured that was the case because he just seems so pathetic and doesn't seem like he wants to hurt anyone. He's just trying to survive. So
yeah, the Briarwoods themselves have a really interesting backstory. It's going to be interesting to see if they go into that during the show.
I hope they do because with the dragon character, I don't even want to say who voices the character just because it's a big reveal about who the dragon actually is. Even though I guessed it, I feel like a lot of people guessed who it was. We got a little bit of history, is like, because I actually like learning about dragons. I know in like the typical, I think, just way people think about dragons is just they're giant they're monsters. They're flying around, they eat people, and that's it. But I like that dragons in D&D, like there's different rankings of dragons and everything, and different subgroups and stuff. I know dragons are supposed to be this very intelligent, very vain species within D&D, and I liked how they kind of went into that. It wasn't enough, I thought, because they kind of deal with that threat after only after 2 episodes. But I was like, oh, that's cool. We kind of learned about that. But with the Briarwoods, I like that we're getting more into them and what they're about. And so, yeah, I hope so. I hope they do indeed go into their history, because I think that'd be better. Makes villains better. Most of the time, we learn more about villains. They become more interesting.
With the dragon thing, there will be a payoff for that.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I
won't go into details, but there is something that will happen that you're going to love. If that's how you feel about it, you're definitely going to like some of the payoff for that.
Okay,
like it
sets
good stuff up.
All right, so yeah, so some of this stuff is all connected to each other. It's one of those kind of things. This is where I want to get into almost, I say spoilers, of course, but that's cool. I'm happy about that. That's great, and it just shows if you have any complaints about the story, like there's more, because we're just in the middle of this. There's still going to be 6 more episodes, and we're kind of just reviewing the initial first half of the season, and so yeah. I'm very interested. Maybe we could return to it. Maybe we can do like a Vox Machina part 2 review, if you will, maybe the next 2 weeks, once all the additional 6 episodes are out. We can make that like a truncated 0.5 discourse. So that'd be good. But did anyone have any other I'm sorry, M0, please.
No, I had a question about the dragon, because the way that situation goes was kind of interesting. And so my question is, are there more dragons? Are there still dragons in this universe or no?
Yeah, there's tons of dragons. There's like, they literally just made a book of a whole of dragons, and it's like, there's a lot of dragons. But they're just like, like Chris said, intelligent, vain, very greedy, but usually they're like, they have a lot of treasure. They have a lot of, they usually have like, they're like, they used to rule the world, but now they've kind of just gone in and like have their horde. It depends, I guess, also with them, but it seemed like there will be dragons.
Well, I did really like how that dragon, like the first 2 episodes I was a little iffy on, but I did like how the dragon situation unfolded.
On dragons, I wanted to ask, it's like, it was still cool. I like the whole idea, even though I knew who it was doing all the dragon stuff. I liked how it they went into the dragon's lair. That's all I'll say. I thought, that was pretty interesting. I liked all that, and the animation for that sequence I thought was quite good. But I wanted to ask you guys a question in regards to Are there good dragons in D&D, or are they all like this? Are they all just pieces of shit? Okay.
There's good ones. There's bad ones. It's usually vain. They're usually just they
They
have
have that problem
recently,
consistently.
there's like Tiamat and Bahamut, and I think Tiamat's like super evil and has like 5 heads, and Bahamut's like
Hydra.
good.
I can answer this stuff because I'm actually versed to this stuff. Actually, the D&D game I've been running takes place in Exandria, the same place the show takes place in.
Cool.
I actually require my players to watch the show because this stuff's going to play into it, and they're going to meet these characters because our campaign takes 20 years later after this.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, the same time where campaign 2 starts. But with the lore and the background of how the dragons work is, basically quick version of the background, like these gods discovered this world, this primordial world, and started shaping it and creating all the races and stuff like that, and they created the dragons. But eventually the 2 dragon gods kind of became 2 different sides. Yeah, Bahamut, the good dragon god, and then Tiamat, the evil dragon god. And then their forces were split between the metallic dragons like silver, brass, gold.
Right.
Those type of dragons are the good protectors. Well, Tiamat had the chromatic dragons like blue, red, green, white. And they were the evil, like greedy dragons. And it's kind of the 2 sides dealing with each other. So that's kind of how that plays out. And like you said, there will be more dragons.
Cool. No, I figured it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's called that for a reason. So I was just curious about just how dragons work in D&D, and I suppose they're based off of just literature from decades ago, centuries ago. Stuff like famously, The Hobbit. We have the dragon Smaug. Is he considered like a red or gold dragon? Because he's evil, obviously, and he like hoards gold and shit.
Yeah.
Is he? Yeah, because I'm just curious. Because that's what because
all
like
dragons sizes. Yeah.
Okay. I know there's different sizes.
How old they are kind of determines how like powerful they are. So if it's like an ancient dragon, it's big, it's usually pretty powerful.
Yeah. And they have stuff like worms, they call them, or whatever the hell the
proper name is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I was interested because I look at Smaug or Smaug, as they call him in The Hobbit. And he feels like a typical like D&D dragon. Just like his design, his color scheme, like he's red and gold. He's super fucking greedy. He's vain. He's cruel. And so I just always thought that. Just was like, I wonder if that was a big inspiration for D&D Dragons was Tolkien's Smaug.
A lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. It heavily influenced D&D.
Nice.
Cool.
The
Ranger class is inspired by,
Aragorn.
And like and how the elves work are heavily inspired by the elves in Lord of the Rings, and the when D&D first started, they had hobbits. They
really?
got sued by
so
they switched them to halflings.
I was gonna say like our hobbits gnomes or something.
Gnomes are separate.
They're a separate thing. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. Listen, I love to learn. This is fascinating to me. So I'm glad we have some D&D experts on here. So that's really cool. Any other thoughts in general on the show? I mean, we still have 6 episodes left. Are you guys interested in it? Is there another thing you wanted to bring up before we go ahead and wrap up? A particular sequence? At this point, it's like, all right, spoilers. So you can go in any detail about whatever scene you want right now. Spoilers. So feel free, anyone, to speak up.
Since we were on dragons, I was gonna say that I did like the reveal that we're in spoilers, right?
This is spoilers. Yep, I already said it, so people know. People know ahead of time if they're watching, they'll know.
Oh, okay. So I really like the reveal of the dragon when he like the whole, like you were saying before, Chris, like the whole like sequence of him like transforming into the dragon, and then that ended up bringing me. And the reason I thought I liked that is because I'm thinking to myself, wait, dragons can like be humans, and if that's the case, then who else is a dragon? So that's what I'm thinking. But so yeah, I really like that part about it. Like I said, the first 2 episodes I was a little iffy on, but I really like that concept and that idea, and I was like, okay, so we can expand on this. But like my favorite episode is probably episode 4. Like that was just a straight up like horror episode, and I'm like, wow, these people are really getting fucked up. Like when they I think the first person who gets it is Scalen maybe, And when I saw him getting his like essence or his soul getting sucked out, I was like, oh shit, they just killed the main character. But then everyone started getting it. I was like, okay, well, no, that's not gonna happen. But it was still really scary looking, just seeing all that happen. And as for your other question on like if you want to see more, it's like yeah, I do want to see more. Like I said, I think the show is getting better with each episode, and I want to learn more definitely about Percival, but just in Pike and everybody. So I just want to learn more about this world and about the characters and everything.
The whole dragon reveal with Krieg, who's voiced by David Tennant. I recognized. I'm like, that's David Tennant because he's doing a slightly modified version of his Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales. I was like, oh, that's this Scrooge McDuck, and I looked at that's David Tennant, and I looked it up. Yeah, it was him.
And what's funny about that is the reason he's on it is because Sam Riegel does the voice of Scanlan, was the voice director of DuckTales. And he worked with David Tennant on it, and he pitched it to him, and he was all for it.
Yeah. No, he does a good job. Like I'm like, okay, clearly because they do the whole thing where like clearly it's this weathered looking, reptile elf man who is the villain. I'm like, no, it's not. Stop trying to make it. It's clearly the guy who's like, you know what? We should give a chance to these Vox Machina people. I'm sure they'll do a great job. I was like, it's you, motherfucker. You're trying too hard to cover all your goddamn bases. Cover for yourself. But I did like the whole because I was like, fuck, I didn't know. Oh, but the thing is, I realized now it's like that must be a common thing for great dragons, elder dragons, or whatever you want to call them, to transform into humans, because that happened in The Witcher. In the first season, The Witcher, that guy was able to turn into a human. So I was like, oh, okay, shit. So this is a common thing, clearly. So I thought that was, I like that whole process. Like, oh shit, so we can have were dragons or something. I think that's kind of interesting.
In the context of D&D, dragon, like the older more powerful dragons are magical, so they're able to literally cast spells to let them take the form of other beings like humans or elves and stuff like that.
Okay, interesting. Oh, I also liked it too when they went in his little dragon lair. He had some Rule 34 art of a sexy dragon lady. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch. I thought that was. I'm like, okay, is this clear? Is this actually something in D&D, or is that like, hey, a little reference to the Rule 34 people who are watching this show? So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, no, and to your point, Xavier, I think episode 4 is my favorite so far, just because it was that haunted house, episode. I thought that was so cool, and those things were so. I was like, at first I was like, oh shit, main character's gonna die. This is kind of like Invincible, where like anyone can fucking die, and it wasn't the chopping block, and because it did. There, like we said in the beginning, this is some heavy rated R gore and blood in this series. I was like, Jesus, people are ripped open, ripped apart, they're squished, they're sucked into walls, and they shit themselves. It's like, oh my god. Well, if you're in it for that, or if you have a weak stomach for that kind of thing in animation, then just forewarning you. But any other general thoughts from people, like favorite moment or sequence or what have you, episode?
No, you go, Casper.
On the subject of the dragon reveal, I remember that part where the dragon guy, I forget his name, he's
Krieg.
like trying to, he's like trying to get his troops motivated. He's doing that big speech, and there's that one guy who's like, oh, what a load of shit. And I thought that was funny, and I'm like, yeah, there is something sus about that guy. And I felt bad for the one who was snarking about it, when he got killed, because I figured most everyone in that scene was going to die, but I was hoping at least he and his friend might live.
I love that. That guy's like, yeah, what a load of shit. And he's like, fuck honor. And immediately him and his friend get got by that dragon, just squishes them in their talons. And they fall. And then they fall. That's the thing. They drop. And like she hits a rock. And then he just comes down. His body's just all twisted and mangled. It's like, Jesus. Also, I like that scene too, because when he does that, Krieg does that super inspirational speech. And it's like, well, guys, I'm just going to go in my tent out of sight, where no one sees me. He's like not present in the battle at all. I'm like, yeah, because you're probably in league with this thing. I didn't know he was the dragon, but I was like, oh shit. So yeah, no, I love that whole sequence too. That was. I mean, it showed the brutality of this world and just how badass dragons are. Any other scenes? Anyone else want to speak up on another scene or sequence that really got them, or they really enjoyed?
Or
your general thoughts on the show?
I really liked. There's a couple moments with Keyleth that were really funny. The weirdest death. Her killing the guy in the lava.
That's right.
That's actually from the first arc of the show.
Oh, that's
of the
funny.
stream that they kind of there's a scene where they're fighting these dark dwarves, and she just pushes one. She literally goes, "I push this dwarf guy into the lava," and he's just slowly dying. So she's just like, so she just takes her staff and just pushes him deeper. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep.
Says, yeah, right. No, that was
also,
funny. So that's the humor in the show that worked for me. I really liked that. That was funny.
I also like the plan scene when they're all doing like the almost Cusco doodles of like, all right, this is how we're gonna break into the prison. I'm gonna ask all the animals, and then the other one's like, I'm gonna drink these potions, and then someone's like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna kill everyone, and then how about we rescue our team? Well, I'm gonna kill. I just thought that was pretty funny.
I like when the animation. No, you're right. I liked how the animation changed too for that, where there are all these little chibis. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cute. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's the humor that worked for me. Or the one where it was they're talking about best kills and stuff. Keyless is like, yeah, isn't that great? And I'm like, that's fucking disturbing what you did. I thought, yeah, that's where I was like, okay, now you're getting on my level in terms of the humor. Any other just final thoughts or sequences you guys want to bring up that tickled your fancy, if you will?
For me, it's just everything of the Briarwoods.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just really awesome. Like, it's funny that you guys mention what is it? The vampire anime in the Castlevania. Matt is a big fan of the games.
Mm-hmm,
so he was heavily inspired by Castlevania when he was creating the Briarwoods.
Makes sense.
So yeah. The parallels between that and the anime, which there might be some because when they were developing the anime, it was coming out, but so it has a lot of relation to the source material of the games, because that's just one of the things that Matt just really liked when as inspiration.
Right. Yeah. No, I could. Yeah, just aesthetically and just the overall design, just the personality too. They're very reminiscent of just Castlevania, which I like. Hey, take from whatever source material you wish to, and that's what you can do in D&D, since it crosses over so many different genres and incorporates so much lore from so many things, whether it be books or movies or other cartoons. Which makes
it's not like Konami's doing anything with Castlevania.
True. Fuck yeah. I mean, take it from them. please.
Wait,
please
they're
do
doing NFTs.
Oh yeah, which everyone wants, what every gamer wants, an NFT of a pixel from Castlevania. Yes, thank you so much. Any other thoughts from anyone else before we go ahead and wrap up? Okay. Oh yeah, please, Austin, go ahead.
I thought Mr. Xavier, before we were talking, he said it was very much like the Western version of Seven Deadly Sins, which is the anime, and yeah, very much so. I think that. And this, it's like very much it's kind of more true to life, or something even like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's a real of like, they're not the best heroes, they're kind of dysfunctional, they're kind of crazy, but they're the only ones we got, and they're saving the day. And I think those things are always very fun, and I think people will have a good time with the show.
Oh yeah, no, that's a perfect way to, I think, sum it up for people who might be unfamiliar with this. Yeah, this is very Guardians of the Galaxy. If you like Guardians of the Galaxy, that whole type of group where, as you said, they are not the best. They're kind of incompetent at times. They argue, but that's a D&D campaign. That's where you play with your friends. That's where that's coming in. That you're right. That's a great way to sell it. Excellent comparison. And overall, yeah. And I will tell people, like, listen, if you were, because I feel like some of us, we kind of felt this way. The first two episodes were probably like, okay, I was like, I don't know if I'm really digging this or whatever, but I would say give it a chance. By the time you get to episode, maybe by the last half of episode 2, where the whole big reveal happens of creating the dragon, you'd be like, oh, are you really into it? And then by episode 3, when they introduce the Briarwoods, and then 4, I'm like, okay, then they really had me with that. That's when I was like really, really digging all of this, and I want to see more. Like, I can't wait to see the back half, and I feel like it would, if you guys want to go ahead and do like maybe a truncated episode of Discourse where we talk about the last back 6 of this series, and hey, they're going to be doing season 2, and it makes me excited for the future and what this can be. And as was brought up earlier, I would not be shocked if a lot of other streaming services or companies are like, hey, let's adapt some of these other D&D people's campaigns and what they've done, because so far it seems to be working for them. It's getting critical acclaim, I'm sure commercial acclaim. I mean, they already greenlit season 2. So, but yeah, overall, I'm really liking the show. Really liking the show, and I encourage people to stick with it if you weren't maybe a fan of the initial first 2 episodes. But that brings an end, I think, to this Discord discourse. This is fun, kind of returning back to the reviews. As always, feel free to leave any feedback for Discord discourse, and I encourage all the people right here. Deadpool, Osnick, we had Emily earlier. Thank you, Emily, for participating. And Xavier, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, we'll go ahead and talk about it in just a bit. But until then, thank you, everybody, and bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Yay. Very nice.